Right, so today's material is a video script exploring Vadim Zeland's concept from Reality Transurfing, Volume 2, focusing on the shift from forcing outcomes through internal intention to effortlessly allowing them via external intention.
And I mean, the vivid analogies right off the bat, like the fly beating against the glass, they're really striking.
Yeah, totally, Viv. But to really maximize the impact of this piece, we should jump straight into the constructive analysis. So, first point, the transition between the overarching concept of external intention and the specific mechanism of mental slides disrupts the otherwise seamless momentum of the argument.
Yes, absolutely. It's a massive scale mismatch, right? That's the root of the friction here.
Right.
Because, I mean, the script sets up this grand, almost cosmic stage for external intention. It walks the reader through the builders of the Egyptian pyramids, right? And the physics of flight in a lucid dream.
Yeah, ancient civilizations mastering a universal force.
Exactly. So the reader is mapping this whole concept on a massive objective scale. But then, and this is the weakness, without any real structural bridge, the text just slams the reader directly into localized individual psychology.
It's just so abrupt.
Yeah, it introduces mental slides as a subjective blocker to this universal force. But, like, before the slide's actual function in the whole manifestation ecosystem is fully mapped out.
Right. So the reader is left momentarily disoriented because they're trying to connect a universal law of physics to, their own internal cognitive biases. And the connective tissue just isn't there yet.
No, it's missing.
It kind of feels as though the script spends the first half meticulously explaining how a car's engine works, right? Like the internal combustion, the pistons, the sheer horsepower of external intention.
I love that analogy.
Thanks. And so the reader is visualizing all this raw, objective power. And then, suddenly, the narrative stops to critique the dirt on the windshield, meaning the subjective mental slide.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And both are entirely relevant, right? If the text doesn't first explain that the driver needs a clear windshield to navigate that engine's horsepower to the correct destination, the pivot just feels random.
Yeah, because the engine doesn't care where it's going. It just provides the thrust.
Exactly.
The windshield determines the visibility of the destination. That is the necessary conceptual link. So as a suggestion to solve this structural disorientation, the author needs to restructure that transition. They need to explicitly frame mental slides as the localized lens through which the overarching engine of external intention reads our agreement.
We have to build that bridge before we force the reader to cross it.
Right, exactly. And there are, concrete ways to do this. These are just a few possible approaches, but option A would be to insert a transitional bridge right before introducing slides.
Like what?
Like they could introduce a concept like GPS coordinates. For example, the script could say, if external intention is the engine that delivers your reality, your mental slides are the GPS coordinates it follows. If your coordinates are scrambled, the engine delivers you to the wrong sector.
Oh, that's clean. Providing that framework first anchors the abstract force to a mechanical process they can instantly grasp.
Yeah, totally. Or, option B, taking that structural edit further, they can manipulate the narrative sequence. Bring the Henry de Toulouse Lautrec example up much earlier in the script.
Oh, right, because right now that arrives pretty late.
Way too late. The script relies on history's, his physical disability, his internal mental slide of disfigurement, and his breakthrough where he drops the importance of his appearance.
Right.
It uses that to illustrate the concept in action. But if you move this historical example up earlier, before explaining the abstract mechanics of how slides block external intention, it completely anchors the concept with a concrete human story first.
Yeah, you show the dirt on the windshield first, and then explain how it blinds the engine.
Exactly. It primes the reader's brain. So when they finally get to the theory, they already have a visceral model of it.
Which is huge, because that visceral understanding is crucial. Even if they clear the windshield, they still have to navigate the emotional weight of their reality, which brings us to the next big critique point.
Let's hear it.
The mechanism of dropping import glosses over the very real friction of biological and financial survival needs, which may alienate a discerning audience.
Oh man, this is such a critical weakness.
Right? The script lays out this three-step protocol for dropping importance. Catch the push, drop the weight, and allow the scene.
Yeah?
And it advises the reader to replace the panicked phrase, "I need this," with the much lighter, "I prefer this."
Which sounds great in theory.
In theory, within the vacuum of philosophy, sure,
It lowers excess potential. But for a reader facing a legitimate crisis, say impending bankruptcy, right, or a severe health scare, telling themselves they merely prefer to survive feels like a literal lie to their nervous system.
It is a lie. The physiological reality makes that kind of casual reframing impossible.
Exactly. And the irony is, the script itself astutely notes that the body is the only meter that doesn't lie, yet it totally ignores the biological cascade of a survival threat.
Yeah, it just breezes past it.
If a reader's nervous system is flooded with cortisol and their amygdala is in sheer terror, whispering, "I prefer this," isn't going to lower their heart rate. By ignoring this high-stakes reality, the script risks sounding completely disconnected from material.
Which undermines the grounded logic they built earlier. Right. It alienates the very audience they want to reach.
For me, the mailbox analogy really highlighted this gap.
Oh, yeah, the walking to the mailbox part?
Yeah, the script instructs the reader to approach their massive life goal the exact same way they would walk to their mailbox. You don't agonize over walking, you just move your feet and open the box.
Right. No desperation.
But my immediate pushback was, well, what if I know the mailbox contains an eviction notice?
Oh, yeah.
The stakes aren't always neutral, so how does one casually stroll to a high-stakes outcome without it feeling like forced delusion?
They can't. And that is the exact question the audience will ask. If the narrative doesn't answer it, the authority of the text just collapses. So the suggestion here is to actively acknowledge the visceral difficulty of dropping importance when the stakes are legitimately high.
Don't shy away from the eviction note.
Address it head on. Offer a stepping stone cognitive reframe that bridges the gap between panic and peace.
Show them how to bypass the amygdala.
Exactly. And again, there are a few ways to solve this concretely. Option A would be to add a brief caveat acknowledging survival stakes. The text could say, "When rent is due, I prefer to pay it feels like a lie." In high-stakes moments, don't try to drop the importance of the outcome. Drop the importance of the next step.
Just the very next step.
Yeah, focus only on the mechanics of sending the next email, stripping the weight from the immediate action, because the nervous system can handle typing an email. It cannot handle saving a life.
That makes so much sense. Zooming the lens in so close that the fear loses its vastness.
Right. And option B is to introduce a physical grounding technique directly into that 3-step protocol. Explain that the body cannot allow the scene if the nervous system is in fight or flight.
Because it's preparing for a predator.
Exactly. So suggest the reader focus entirely on the physical sensation of their feet moving to the mailbox, rather than the mail itself. Grounding the body forces the neurological system out of future tense panic.
Getting the nervous system to that baseline neutrality is an absolute prerequisite for taking action, which actually segues perfectly into our final point today.
Let's do it.
The distinction between utilizing external intention and engaging in purely passive magical thinking isn't sharply defined enough to satisfy a skeptical analytical audience.
Yeah, this is a dangerous line to walk. The script makes a deeply compelling case for how internal intention, the grinding, the forcing, creates excess potential that triggers balancing forces to push back.
The mechanics of the resistance are airtight.
Airtight. But the weakness emerges in how external intention is illustrated as the alternative. The author leans heavily on phrases like, "It turns out that it arranged itself," and they use that example of a warm introduction magically arriving in an inbox after 3 days.
After basically doing nothing.
Exactly. It inadvertently flirts with the just sit on the couch and manifest it trope, which weakens the piece's authority.
It edges dangerously close to the Secret style wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
And that is going to trigger immediate cynicism in this specific demographic. The target audience here consists of highly intellectual people who are burned out on hustle culture. They want efficiency. But if they sniff out a narrative suggesting they can just wish for an outcome, they'll disengage.
They'll mistake it for toxic positivity.
Exactly. They know outcomes require a vehicle. So let's look at that section discussing the two conference speak. The script describes person A as someone who sends mass emails, stays up all night, and uses internal intention like a battering ram, and they fail.
Right.
Then person B identifies one clear fit, sends a 90-word pitch, and moves on. 3 days later, magic happens.
Right. The surface-level argument is person B didn't care as much.
But looking at the actual mechanics of that scene, person B still engaged in what I would call prepared serendipity.
Oh, I love that term, prepared serendipity.
Right? They didn't just sit there waiting. They had to get out of a chair, operate a keyboard, and actually write a pitch. Action is still the vehicle.
It is.
So the suggestion here is to emphasize that external intention requires frictionless, decisive action, not inaction. Clarify that the absence of struggle does not equal the absence of effort.
That is such a vital distinction. Prepared serendipity is exactly what is missing from the explicit text. As for concrete examples of how to fix this, option A would be to reframe that conference speaker example. Explicitly highlight their frictionless work.
Show the competence involved.
Yeah, like person B didn't just sit on the couch waiting for an email. They did the research, found the perfect thematic fit, and sent a crisp 90-word pitch. They took precise action, but they didn't bleed needy, desperate energy onto it.
Bleeding desperate energy onto the keyboard, that's exactly what excess potential looks like in a modern workspace.
Yes. Framing it this way honors the intellect of the reader, and option B is to add a definitive sentence near the end of the script that draws a hard line. Something sharp, like, external intention isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing exactly what is required without the heavy tax of desperation.
Oh, that is a great boundary sentence. It tells the skeptical mind, we aren't asking you to stop working. We are asking you to stop suffering while you work.
Exactly. It bridges the gap perfectly.
Well, this has been a deeply constructive exploration of a genuinely fascinating piece of material. Just to quickly recap our main takeaways. First, we need to smooth the structural transition into mental slot.
Right. Using structural bridges like the GPS coordinates analogy.
Yes. Second, acknowledging the reality of high-stakes importance to maintain grounded logic.
Adding caveats for survival-level stakes, like focusing on the very next step or using physical grounding.
Exactly. And finally, clarifying the line between frictionless action and passive manifestation.
By explicitly defining prepared serendipity so the audience doesn't dismiss it as magical thinking.
Perfect. Enthusiastically invite the listener to implement these high-level editorial tweaks and submit their revised work back to the critique for further exploration. The underlying philosophy here is profound, and with these calibrations, its delivery will definitely match its depth.